how songs have a message that can remind us of truths that we often need to use to reset ourselves sometimes, to get our hearts and minds back on track. And when they are a catchy tune, it really does help. I need to be reminded a lot of the hope and the good that can be overlooked in life, like a four-leaf clover that I might have overlooked before, or how the sun will come up tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun. Or my ringtone of, here comes the sun, little darling, here comes the sun, and I know it's all right. Or the song that goes, three little birds pitch by my doorstep, singing sweet songs of melodies pure and true, singing, this is my message for you. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing's gonna be all right. I hope you have songs that come to mind or that you like to play or turn up full blast to boost your good feelings, or when you are feeling tired of it all and frustrated. Or maybe you have other ways of helping yourself realize that life is much more than the bad things that happen to us. That yes, we live life with the ugliness of life, but it must not define us, right? Who we are is much more amazing and complicated and wonderful than all the bad stuff. On Easter Sunday, we remember that the world did its worst to a God who came to us, who meets us on earth to show us with a life of loving kindness, and through telling stories about God's love and how to love each other. And part of that story is what the world did back to God, right? How the world battered and bruised and betrayed and abandoned, crucified and buried our fun-loving, truth-telling, life-giving God. And despite it all, Jesus still chose to return and walk the walk with us and talk the talk with us. Jesus rose again and immediately went to work spreading God's love to the very people who had hurt him, who had betrayed him, who had left him. He came back with forgiveness and love and care to show us there is no end to God's love. And hear me when I say there is nothing you can do that would keep God's love at bay. On Easter morning, the women went looking for Jesus. The angel said, he is not in the tomb. So they ran, afraid yet filled with joy. They sought after him. They hurried to Galilee, looking for their risen Christ. And in their seeking, the text tells us, suddenly Jesus met them. Jesus met the women in their seeking. Jesus met them in their moment of fear and grief. Jesus met them when they felt lost. Jesus met them and provided hope. Many of us are like the women who are seeking Christ. We have known grief or fear. We have felt lost or are feeling lost now in the unexpected situations we are subject to. And we are in need of some hope. So we come together. We are searching together, gathering around tables right here. And we are helping each other feel welcome with our presence, with our smiles, with our locking of eyes and meeting each other. and with our willingness to be here for each other, even though we do not know all of the needs and hopes that the people in this room have, we are here for each other. And so, I lost my spot. But we are here for each other. There we go. That is the simple, basic message, right, of the gospel, that the gospel teaches us, that we're here for each other. We all are welcome. That God's world that God created is God's world of welcome to all of creation. But we do get tricked into thinking that the world is so full of ugly goodbyes of death and corruption, that the fabric the whole world is made of is decay and full of mold. But remember, that is not all the fabric that God provides. There is a new bolt of cloth, right, Vicki? Being buried only to find, a new bolt of cloth ready to be used. Because in reality, the world is a world of welcome. And God made it that way and reminds us that beyond the time of death is a wonderful welcome always waiting for us. That the very pattern of life that our Creator set in motion is birth and growth and new life and death and new life that shows up in a million different ways all around us and inside of us. For just as Jesus met the women in their seeking, Jesus meets us everywhere, any time of the day or night. Do not be afraid. There is a new beginning in the making that will unfold and open up and take flight. Today on Easter Sunday, we celebrate when the women came to the tomb where Jesus had need of some hope. Where Jesus had been buried only to find that he wasn't there. He was out in the world alive. When Luke tells this story, there's an angel in the tomb who asks the women why they're looking for someone who is alive in the place where dead people are buried. Maybe the lesson is that we have to question ourselves about what it is that we are looking for, really. Do we really know what we are looking for? The message might be that we can find meaning in looking for the unexpected nature of life all around us. Look at the changes and find God in the changes. God happens to be the master artist of turning rough, bold strokes of paint into a masterpiece, of tearing into a masterpiece. God wants us to look for signs of new life, for goodness, and for hope all around us. Even when we don't see Jesus, even when things are scary or sad and we run away from the emptiness, we can still look for the good that just might be up ahead of us on the horizon. It is all too common that we want to give up and call it quits and walk away and say, that is it. But if we take a deep breath with our lives and breathe in the reality of what this is, what world is happening around us, what actions, what people, what's being taken into this world, we see that God is always somehow with us. God's signature can be found on our life. And we are made as a part of the enormous, we are one of the part of the enormous collection of artwork by the same master artist of creation. We are made to be creative and unique in all the many ways that anyone can define or think of about creation, because God can make all kinds of things in this creation. And all of creation has its beauty and curiosity, and it is good. Think of some things that are good in your life right now. Think of those best things that give you hope. Think of some things that are always good, that you can always look to when you're sad or scared. Those are some of the very good things that are a part of life that sometimes get lost in the confusion of all the trouble that we feel when we are stressed out and hurt and confused. But there are those good things that bring hope. The Easter story, the good news that Jesus came back to help us, to get us through that rough time, that is so important. That all four Gospels, they include that in their story. It's a powerful part of our faith story. Sometimes we turn the pages of our stories of life and we see a story that finds more joy out of tearing a person down rather than being reasonable and taking an objective look at the person or the situation they are facing. And often, what is written in that storyline that gets told shows us that we have forgotten how to deal with disappointment in life. Sometimes we forget how to adjust when our expectations are turned upside down, right? But that is an important part of the process, an important part of that process that's very key to our faith development. Like not things that happen in life, not being chosen for an all-star, all-region, or all-state team is probably the most irrelevant disappointment that a son or a daughter may face in their life. But helping them understand it and keeping this part of growing up in perspective is a worthy way to spend our time than to use, like sometimes we do, use the keyboard as a weapon to spread a fierce written outburst of uncontrollable emotion in an email. Have you ever gotten some very disappointing news that made you angry, that made you feel like you were tricked and that people were laughing at you, and it made you want to go and tell the bearer of the bad news that they were wrong and that they have no idea of how big a mistake they have made? Did it make you want to write an angry email or to have a speech prepared in your mind that you were going to tell them? I'm sure that's happened to many of us. When all we wanted was to live a life of peace and happiness, but now you have this anger and disgust in your heart, and it makes you wonder if real happiness might be something deeper, that maybe if you worked on it, you could find out how something more meaningful could form out of the disappointment that you are facing. Because if you think about it, we can probably reflect on far more serious disappointments in our life. There are times when we are hurt way down to the very core of our being. And we ask ourselves, How are we supposed to find happiness in the face of denial? How are we to find peace in this great disappointment? How can we feel good about living when we lost the game? How can we be true to our faith and have happiness when we are faced with such a huge amount of bad news everywhere, every minute? We search then. We search like the women who left the empty tomb. We search for wisdom, even in the unexpected places. We love to sing, Christ has risen and hallelujah, but how can we make that song feel authentic in the midst of disappointment? We want to get through this hurt and cross over to the other side where we can dance again and feel good about ourselves. We may find God had something different for us, and we need to figure it out. What is it? Lots of us turn to Google. What is true happiness? Where can I find it? True happiness could be viewing oneself as resilient and able to overcome our troubles. True happiness is looking for positive meaning in one's life. True happiness is the capacity to create realistic plans and take steps to reach one's goals. True happiness is effective communication, problem solving, and coping skills. True happiness is cultural beliefs and traditions and rituals that help us cope with life. True happiness is reaching out for help and relying on others. We begin to see that then these disappointments, when we apply a little bit of what we know about true happiness, we can experience something different. Rather than these experiences becoming walls that we can't climb, we can begin to see how there may be a hidden door. Like back here, there's a hidden door in that wall. They become opportunities for change. The change we most need often is that change in our own heart. Instead of trying to change someone else, how do we see the change in our own heart? They could be opportunities to draw us nearer and closer to God, to seek God's face, to recognize God, to see the truth and the hope, the greatest desire of our heart. To find the resurrection, the life that is ready to surprise us with new beginnings. That is the simple, easy thing that we just know is so difficult to find some days, right? We want Easter happiness even in the midst of failed expectations and betrayal and denial and actions that are taken against us that are based on lies and the wrong information. When I think of life like this, I think of a person that was able to take life and all of its dreary, difficult times. An artist that many of you know, Van Gogh, is one of the finest painters, in my opinion. Certainly he is one of the most popular great painters of all times. The most beloved, his command of color most magnificent. He transformed the pain of his tormented life into delightful beauty. Pain is easy to portray, but Van Gogh used his passion and pain together and portrayed the ecstasy and joy and magnificence of our world. No one had ever done it before like Van Gogh had. Perhaps no one ever will. He painted Starry Nights with also the full and also the full sun over the golden fields of wheat. He couldn't even sell his paintings, though. No one was ready for his over-the-top expression of his great love for God's big, brightly colored world. I think in a similar way, God painted the world with the bright, bold strokes of the over-the-top love that Jesus had for this world. And the world was not ready for that bright, over-the-top expression of love either. Somehow God knew, though, that with a colorful example of love and not giving up, we would eventually learn to bring love to more and more people and turn the hurt and ugliness into something worthwhile. A new day is always dawning, and the light is always shining somewhere. We know a force that is stronger than hate and greed and money-hungry power. We see a glimpse of the good that humankind can bring to the world in the face of evil and hurt and pain and loss. When we reflect on this year, I'm sure all of us can think about how this year has been a tough one for many of us. Some of us have experienced emotional problems, financial difficulties. Some have dealt with serious health problems or the loss of a home or a job. We have lost loved ones. But death cannot stop the good news. It is alive, it is unbound, and wild in this world. So on the way to Galilee, Jesus greets the women, just like Jesus greets us every day, and says to them, "Go and tell my brothers and sisters to go on ahead to Galilee where they will see me." How are the ways that we share that with our brothers and sisters that we see on the way? As we celebrate this good news of Easter, let us also go out seeking Christ in the faces of our neighbors and strangers and in the good works that are alive in the world. Jesus knows what we will always need to have, are reminders. Jesus knows how our human minds work and what we need and our feelings, that we do need those reminders. We need to receive them and we need to give them. That the good news is greater than any tyrant. That the good news of God is more alive than anything that tries to kill God. More alive than anything that tries to kill the Spirit of God in all of us. Kings come and go, and we may tremble still, but God shakes the earth with power and might so tender and so fresh that it can make a tomb bloom and blossom with new life, with the promise of abundant, joyful life, with the promise of resurrection. Go out and see where you can find all those promises just there waiting for you.